Afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on which part of the world that you're in. I'm just going to give everyone a few minutes just to get on. I can see that people are coming in thick and fast, which is great. So we're just going to give everyone a chance to jump on. If you can see us and hear us, just please put something in the Q&A box or the chat box, which you should see at the bottom of your screen, just so we know that we're talking to everyone and it's not just ourselves. It's always a good place to start. So Lois, hello. Thanks for saying hello, Phil. Okay, we're off to a good start in terms of people can hear us and see us. As we go through today, if you've got any problems with audio, visual, so on and so forth, then just usually what sometimes works is if you refresh or if you close the Zoom link and go back into it, hopefully nobody should have any problems. Internet connections all seem to be okay, but if you do have anything, that usually sort of cracks it. Everyone seems to be coming in. Claude, thanks for letting us know. Dean, thanks for letting us know you're here. So my name's David from XG Magazine, and I'm teamed up today with Paddy from Spendesk, who I'm going to hand over to in a minute, and he can go through and tell you a little bit more about himself and what he's covering today. But what we really wanted to do is team up with Spendesk to bring you something in terms of around obviously expense management, and I'm not going to steal his thunder and I'll let him talk about that. But if this is a big area at the moment for two reasons. I think there's a few up and coming companies who are doing similar things, so it's really nice to see what Spendesk are doing a bit different to the others that are out there, and really get into what their sort of niche and their unique selling points are. But equally as well, it's obviously a big time for lots of businesses in the UK and globally to keep an eye on their spending at the moment, more than ever, because cash is very tight and businesses need to keep control of what's going on. So we really wanted to bring this to you today, and I think it's going to be really valuable. So I can see people are really coming in now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Paddy, and as we go along, if you've got any questions that you do have, feel free to put them in the Q&A box, because we are going to have a Q&A section at the end as well. So we want to make sure if you've got any questions, we can get those answered. Try not to get too technical on us, but we'll see what we can do, see what we can get answered for you today. So I'm going to hand over to Paddy to let him take it away, and he's got a bit of a presentation he wants to run through with us.
Right, thanks a million, Dave, and thank you everyone for having me and coming along today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the question that you've probably heard 4,000 times in the last 7 months. Can everyone see my screen? If you can just give me a quick note in the chat.
Yeah, it seems people can see it, so I think we're off to a good start.
There we go. Now, when we think about automating things, I think automating that question is something on the to-do list for everyone. Anyway, as mentioned by Dave, Paddy is my name. O'Neill the second name, so no marks for guessing where I'm from. I am born and raised in Ireland. And what I do is I run the UK team here at Spendesk. Now, we will talk a little bit about Spendesk during the presentation, but the goal here is very much not to give you a product demo and then bombard you with emails. It's very much to talk a little bit more about a couple of the things that we've seen on the market. Now, before we get into that, maybe just to introduce myself in a little bit more terms. So as mentioned, I run the UK team at Spendesk, and I've been with Spendesk since January this year. So what that means is all I know in terms of working with a product that works in the spend management space is the year 2020, which has been some form of a roller coaster, to say the least. Before I worked at Spendesk, I actually worked at a company called Intercom. Now, what Intercom did is they worked in the customer support software space. And what they did a lot was on the cutting edge of areas around automation. How we could automate some tasks, how we could change things that we once held as truths, and change them to really update them with today, using technology alongside them. And in many cases, that's what excited me about Spendesk, is they were looking at different industry, different sector, but trying to think about it in the same way. What are we doing now? What could be improved? And now let's build a product to improve it. Over the last 10 months at this stage, time really does fly, I've been lucky enough to speak with quite a few finance professionals across the UK, across the Nordic markets, Benelux as well, to really understand some of the things that they're seeing, some of the things that they have faced, not only pandemic terms, but prior to the pandemic. And it's been very, very fascinating. So that leads us on to the big topic, which is expense management in 2020. And of course, like any webinar in 2020, we are going to mention the C word, COVID, and how that has brought about what we think is really exciting changes. I will try and keep the cliches to a minimal, but if you want to have a running count, you can. First of all, we start with the new normal. I know it's been said an awful lot. The fact is, when we think about probably the biggest change in just general work today versus February, January, is that now if you're working in an office, the ability to work remote is essential. Whether or not it's going to be full-time remote, up to debate, but certainly this ability to be flexible with where people are is absolutely essential. Interesting point that I remember hearing from our CFO, Fabian, was at the start of the lockdown. He was working with a person working with someone via our CFO Connect community, who was based in, I believe was the Netherlands, a customer of ours. And a big issue that they had was that they'd all gone remote, but they had a hell of a lot of paperwork in an office that they could no longer access. So simple things like that, that we never thought about before, are now the normal. Beyond that, although remote comes with challenges, what comes with more challenges is probably the direction that we are going to go to, which is this kind of half remote, half in work, flexible days, on days, off days, whatever way it's going to work. That comes with even more complexity, because when everyone's remote, we're all in the same hymn sheet. When everyone's in the office, we're all in the same hymn sheet. When you have people in the office, people also remote, creates a hell of a lot of friction just across the whole, many processes across the business. That being said, and when we think about this last period, I know it's Spendesk, but I think I speak for a lot of people, certainly a lot of people I've gotten to speak with recently, is we're optimists. And there is silver linings. There is, on many senses, some of the companies who have done extremely well over the last 7 months or so. What they've done is they were already operating with this more decentralized model. In many cases, we're already somewhat remote friendly, but we're very agile. We're very quick to adapt to what they needed to do. And they're the companies who are really trailblazing right now. Now, on the other side, even the companies who had to catch up, maybe in many cases, people knew, our expense management, it's a problem, maybe not urgent right now, but we know we need to fix it. Or maybe we need to get in a new piece of software, maybe we need to change this process, maybe we need to build out a new hiring plan, whatever that is. COVID and everything that went with that became the catalyst and said, you know what, now we have the chance to do it. And for all of the challenges, for all of the heartache and all of the terrible, terrible things that have come out of this, some very great stuff has as well. And you're seeing, and I can speak from Spendesk perspective and perhaps from other companies' perspectives as well, is the work that we've done over the last 6 months is not only going to it's not just work to get us through the current circumstances. It's actually work that's going to stand to us way past however long this pandemic and everything associated will last. So for me, that I believe is really, really exciting. So I mentioned processes and changes and things that people have done over the last however long. The fact is there's a lot of processes that are problematic. I can attest to this. things from payroll. Certainly it's never the most exciting thing to be running, from a lot of other things. But one that really does, I think, stand out and potentially would hit home with the crowd here is around expense management. And it is something that, although there has been innovations, and I think in many ways, many cases, better ways of doing a broken process, it still is very problematic from start to finish. Like when we think about, fact is, even across any finance team, there is a lot of things that, whether they happen in expense management or just in simple AP terms, there is a lot of things that are tedious, a lot of things that are repetitive. They take up time, then they take up resources. But there is one thing that they don't take up, which is brain power. And what's the one thing, to be perfectly honest, we pay people to do, we employ people to do? It's to think. It's to use their brains, do what they can do that no one else can do. However, when we think about AP, we think about, especially around expense management, the process is around, have you got approval for this? Can you show me where you got the approval for this? Can we pass me on the receipt? Is this within policy? What is your current expense like this month? Great, thank you for all of that. We'll now pay you back in 1 to 2 months if you are lucky. To me, that feels like a broken process. So it's an interesting way to think about it. The fact is, the impacts of this process are, as I mentioned, takes valuable time away from actually doing valuable work. For anyone on the call, on the webinar, who potentially has a team, they have a finance assistant maybe, they have someone who works on the AP side of things. Are we really paying them to check off receipts versus lines in an Excel sheet? The fact is, a lot of companies, that's what ends up happening. And what happens when we ask people to do that? They make mistakes. Not because it's too hard, it's because it's too easy. Brains go into autopilot. And we start working through lots of tedious work, inputting data, and what ends up happening, we get errors. Now, when you get those errors, you then have to fix them, which, again, I'm sure someone can attest to the pain that has been caused by a missed decimal point. And above all else, it really hurts your team. No one is getting out of bed in the morning to chase receipts. No one is setting themselves a goal of marking off 40 expense reports today and will high five their their friends saying, you know what, I hit my goal today. No one's doing that. In fact, it's really hurting their satisfaction. When we actually focus on the team, there's a lot of things that have become more complex. Something that I thought was an interesting point when we were speaking to, actually, evidently someone based in Ireland, a CFO based in Ireland very recently. And he came to us and said, you know what, guys, we have a problem. And he said, I hope this doesn't sound stupid, but I don't know how to give my team stationery when we're working remote. He said, philosophically, I don't want anyone to pay for business operating expenses, be that a piece of software or a notebook and pen out of their own pocket. You know, these are things that we provided before, where 2019, they would walk across to someone's desk, the admin team, or even just a station in the office, and pick up a new notebook. He said, I really don't know how to do this right now, because the only thing you could think of is what we do is we allow that person to go on Amazon, ask their boss, can they buy it, then pay for it themselves, then get the receipt, then forward the receipt onto us, and then also forward in the approval with their boss on CC, saying he said I could buy this €2 notebook. And then the finance team would look at it, they'd assign it to the right expense account, and then they'd run a payroll or bank transfer to get it back to the employee within a month or so of them buying it. And to him, he said that process sounds ridiculous. And it's very hard to argue with that. 2020 has made buying a notebook very, very difficult, not only for employees, but for this finance team as well. You're probably asking 4 people for 10 minutes their time for a €2 notebook. Interesting thought, I thought. The fact is most employees want to make purchases in the best interest of the company. And we believe at Spendesk that companies should trust their employees to make those purchases. And then the last thing that we have seen, which I think has been very evident from my work at Spendesk, but also I'm sure in in fact, everyone's business, is the last 6 months have been all hands on deck. From a work perspective, they've been intense. I think everyone would attest to that. There's been a lot of forecasting to do, reforecasting, moving from annual or 3-year plans to weekly plans, monthly plans. This relentless focus on cash, this relentless focus on business, showing people how we can actually still create business in this storm. And then we ask them to do an expense report. It's again going back to this point of, is this the right use of anyone's time? So just some thoughts that, I suppose, feedback from the ground that I've heard over the last few months. Now, the solution. The solution is we're going to get robots to take all of your jobs. That's not the solution. But that's what people will lead you to believe when they think about AI, they think about automation, and they pitch these as these big, scary, scary things. The fact is, anything to do in the space of automation is become the most overhyped, I think, software trend, certainly of the last 10 years, has been all about, how robots will take over our jobs. The fact is, where automation is today, and I can speak having sold a lot of automation products, is it's nowhere near taking anyone's job. What it is here to do is to enhance your job. It is to remove the tedious tasks, the data entry, the chasing of receipts, etc., etc. Remove that from your life so you can do what you do best, which is think, which is to make plans, which is to think about how I can get my business from X to Y. Automation is your best friend here, not your mortal enemy. And it's very simple when we start thinking about where do we start. What I'd always say to people is get a notebook, write down a couple of tasks that you find yourself doing a lot, and just put a little tick beside the ones that you do time and time again. Count them up over a week. And if you're finding that you're doing the same thing 20, 30, 40 times, I think there's room for automation. The fact is, if you're finding that, others are finding that, therefore a product will more than likely exist. That's when you go to market, you find the tools that might be able to help you out. There is areas that you can look at right now, go into G2 Crowd, or if you are to go onto Capterra, type in whatever you're looking for, you will find 10, 15, 20 providers. And then it's a case of just rolling these out into your business. Now, I appreciate very simplified here, but this is a very simplified process that a lot of companies who are now thinking 2020 has taught me something. This is where the direction we need to go. A lot of companies are doing this, whether it's bigger or a smaller scale, every day. The benefits we kind of talked about. You automate things, you're going to save some time. Things that take hours can be done instantly, automatically. You're going to remove any errors. The fact is, robots are better at data entry than us, and they don't need breaks and they don't need a salary. It is definitely a better way to think about this. You're going to get more insights. When we think about reconciling a bank statement, you have no insights. You need to wait till the end of the month to kind of have a look through that and say, oh, that really was that how much we spent? Tools are getting better at this, but still, when you're really leveraging heavy automation, what we start to do is we start to give you real-time insights, because the machine's always working. You just have to pop the hood, look in, see what's going on right now, and you can operate your business on a real-time basis, not a monthly basis or a bi-weekly basis. So all this leads you to have is more time to do what you do best. So from my side, my goal was just to kind of frame the world to begin with, frame some of the challenges that have been thrown up our way, and frame some of the ways people are thinking about solving them. So just to recap, the world has changed. There's no qualms about it. There's no getting around it. 2020 is a much different year from 2019. Expense management in 2019, I don't think was great. In 2020, causes some serious problems. However, there is automation, and there's areas and there's products that we think will help your business automate the tedious tasks and then allow you to focus on what's really, really important. So what we're really talking about here is a process, a forward-thinking process of how to actually spend money in 2020, 2021. As it will soon creep up on us, which is a little bit terrifying. At Spendesk, a lot of what we talk about is the actual spend process. The way anyone spends money at work, the whole way from deciding what to spend money on, to payments methods that they spend it on, to then getting into the post-payment, reconciliation, accounting, etc. The area that we focus in on a lot. The fact is, most, I suppose, spend processes throw up the same issues, same challenges. Before you spend anything, what we need to do is we need to have rules in place, because again, if we grow our businesses quickly, you have 10, 20, now 50, now 100 employees. We need something that will scale with them, and rules for everything that we don't like about them. Rules do scale. Put a rule in place, it will scale. It will only scale for a point in time, but it will scale. Maybe you want to work towards, you have to define a team budget. Then you have to think, all right, how big should this budget be? Why does the marketing team always want more, etc. Then how do you do approvals? So what should we do for an approval? How much should each person be allowed to approve? What should that sign-off process look like? Like that stuff is tricky even when you're sitting beside your boss. When we're in a remote environment, wow, that's painful. Speaking of painful, actually trying to pay for something at work. I don't say this with much pride, but I certainly in a previous career did have a picture of my boss's corporate credit card on my phone that I would use for any online payments, which I think will make a lot of people shudder. I think certainly from me coming into now the finance side of things, selling to finance professionals, I can understand the risk and the hassle and the stupidity of that, to be perfectly honest. But that came from the fact of I tried to track down where he was. How could I get his card? Do I need his card every single time? I was spending so much money, but I didn't have the card myself, that it just made more sense for me to almost memorize the number. That was for whether it's online payments as well. What is the best way to pay for something online? What should I put on an invoice? What should I put on a credit card? How can I make an expense claim? I heard of a story from a customer that we were speaking to quite recently, and they said up until, I believe, the month of April, their expense policy was, when they moved to remote, was that employees would post in an envelope all of their receipts with a printed out Excel sheet with all of the different areas that they spent on, and then it would go into a team who would then do the manual work of matching receipts with the lines on the sheet and reconciling manually. That was their process. Which leads us into reconciliation, which, let's face it, is just data entry. For the most part, it is data entry. Now, thankfully, we've made some great strides across all of these, especially when we think about getting data into your accounting software, into tracking spend. There's been some good strides there. But overall, there is a hell of a lot of problems. Now, the fact is, I think these all stem from one core problem, one major problem. And it's pretty simple. And it comes down to the fact that it is difficult to spend money at work. Now, maybe some people from the accountancy or the finance control side might say maybe it's not difficult enough. But when I say it's difficult to spend money at work, I mean across the board, from the employee who actually wants to make the payment to the finance team who want to account for said payment. It's a nightmare. It's fraught with problems every step of the way. The spend process, we believe, is broken. What has made it broken is, in many senses, some of the tools that we're using and the process that we're using were created in actually quite some time ago. Company credit cards. First credit card was invented, came out to market in 1958. Always surprised me to hear that. And since then, now there might have been a couple of innovations, but I always put them down to since 1958, you can now tap your credit card to pay for something and you can turn it gold. Beyond that, we're not really advancing very quickly there. It still is, for all intents and purposes, the same mechanism that was created in 1958. Expense reports are sometimes a necessary evil. That being said, has anyone really tried to tackle them? Really tried to understand, right, is there a better way of doing this, or will we just keep going as we have done, again, certainly since the mid-80s, if not before then? Now, in many cases, we believe accounting is leading the charge here, as I'm sure all of us Xero users will attest to, that with accounting, we are very much leading the charge in terms of automating, getting ourselves ready for the 21st century, to be honest, and well into the 21st century, from tools like Xero, tools like NetSuite, etc. That being said, there is still quite a lot of people out there, quite a lot of businesses out there who aren't even relying on these kind of softwares, which many people would just deem as standard as of today. So there's a lot of broken processes that are really hurting us from spending money at work in the best possible way. Things are starting to change. And this is where I think it gets exciting. It gets exciting for me, and maybe for people who are very much software inclined, is when we start thinking about the spend process and how you do spend, people are starting to think, right, what are the repetitive tasks? What are the things that I'm doing all of the time? And what can I put in place to change? Approval flows, approval processes, approval max, great little solution for that. To actually optimize that approval process, put in your different tiers. If it's a £50 expense, it goes to me. If it's a £200 expense, it goes to my boss. Simple things like that. Automated, based on software, based on, never a lack of clarity in terms of what's been approved and what hasn't. Payments are getting exciting. It's a space that we operate in a little bit, but payments, we think across the board, are getting very exciting. There is more innovation happening today, and I think it's coming from the B2C world. When we think about banking, Revoluts and Monzos are changing the face of banking, and that is bleeding into businesses. Both from Revolut and Monzo actually now looking into business offerings, but overall, things like virtual cards came from B2C. They work extremely well for business. Even getting physical cards linked up to real-time software, showing what's being spent when, give me insights, give me data, give me visibility. These are starting to come along. Tools like Expensify, tools like web expenses, etc. Again, allowing people to be a little bit faster with their expense reports. Being able to generate them on the go, being able to generate them in real time, not wait until the last day of the month when you have 35 expenses to do and you want to leave the office and you're stuck behind your desk, which, not naming names, I've found myself in that position quite a bit. It's all integrated into accounting tools, which is exciting again, removing any sort of, I suppose, challenges with actually getting some things from the payment methods or from how you spend into your accountancy. And it's leading to reduced errors. It's leading to less manual work. It's leading to accountants, finance controllers starting to get a little bit more time, space to do what they do best, which is to think about the financial stability, viability, and growth of that business. So from us, now we have a couple of Spendesk examples here, but where we really do think companies need to be in 2020 is to have a digital spend process. By that I mean software that is going to allow your team, your companies to spend in the way that you want them to spend. Whether it's virtual cards, these are the safest way to buy anything online. Good for one purchase, then they destroy themselves. They will tell you exactly who spent what and why did they spend it. All of your tracking is done at point of purchase. Employee debit cards. Again, this is a way to, one, empower your staff quite a bit, but also put the right levels of controls in place because these are smarter cards than anything we've seen before. So you're going to have a smart card with the right amount of controls on who can spend what, when, and where, all linked into a real-time dashboard so you can see in real time what spend is like. Again, we think these are two somewhat necessities. Employee debit cards, maybe more so when travel does start kicking off again, they're going to be more and more important. Speaking of travel, being able to give everyone the chance to snap an expense at any time is something that we really need to be thinking about because people will have expenses. The last thing we want them to do is to take up their time and the finance team's time by all of this data input that has to go around them. Allow them to do it in real time, push them through into a digital solution, which can feed into your accountancy software. Same goes for invoices. Again, having a way for your team to actually submit invoices for approval, getting to even to the point of even paying invoices via software. These are some of the areas that we need to be thinking about in 2020 and into next year. When we think about spending, this is really where we think it will all fit into. So the spend process to us is the approval. So what you need to be able to think about is how can I be as efficient as possible at setting spending rules, defining team budgets, give approval to the different team members. Payment, how can I assign the right payment cards to the right people? How can I upload and pay invoices? How can I claim past expenses? On the reconcile part, how do I automate as much data as possible? How do I track spending in real time? And what reporting insights are needed for me and how, I suppose, quickly can I get them? It's all well and good getting reports, insights from Q1 2020. Now, what's changed since Q1 2020? Our ability to get insights quickly on our business is going to define how successful our business can be in the future. To be able to pilot your business on a day-to-day basis, if needs be, because that's what did need to happen. Certainly for many businesses in March and April, they needed to pilot their business on a daily basis. How can you do that if you're relying on a bank statement to tell you how much you're spending? So important things to understand. And then of course, making sure that everything is wrapping up into your accountancy software. I like to think that these are the standard. right now that most, if not all, companies will be on an accountancy platform very, very soon, if they're not already. Therefore, everything needs to feed into your accountancy software. It needs to be custom, like you need to be able to export things in the right format so that we can account for it quickly and compliantly. So 2020, I think what we need to think about is absolutely paper-free for obvious reasons, but also how do we limit data entry, repetitive tasks, and actually probably some data in here is to empower employees to make the right decisions. Now, thankfully, you have a lot of solutions available. And as I said, I didn't want to really bring this very much into Spendesk, and I want to absolutely talk about some of the great solutions on the market, and there is a hell of a lot of them. From your Quantos in France, Plios in the Nordics, to Amex, to be honest, as a credit card provider, are coming along very, very quickly in some of their offerings. Expensify, very good solution for expense reports. From more of the comprehensive tools like SAP Concur, if you really want to tackle this, like it's very in-depth tool. Where we do think we fit in is the fact that we are sometimes missing this kind of all-in-one solution that's looking at across the reporting, the credit, the company cards, reimbursement. Is sometimes we're missing just that one solution that you can plug in today, will sit between your bank account and your accountancy software and can handle the whole spend process. That's where we think we fit in as a whole, and what we think is becoming very interesting for companies is the fact that they can outsource the process to us. By that, I mean you get a platform. The platform has all the payment methods you need. It allows you to build whatever approval flows you need. It allows you to trust in your employees, but still give yourself the control so that we're never going to be in this space of having to wait to understand how much we spend. You can see it in real time, giving you all of the control that you need. As I mentioned, the way Spendesk works is it sits within your bank account, or sits between your bank account and the accountancy software that you are using. Let's say, for argument's sake, Xero, where we actually have a direct 2A integration, which is going to allow you to, with one click of the button, send all of your payments directly to Xero into the right GL tab. So once you use Spendesk in this way, it allows you to control all of the payments. That means approval flows, that means assigning the right payment methods to the right people. The staff then can make the right payments, whether it's a virtual card online, whether it's a payment for a coffee with a physical card when they're meeting a client. Within Spendesk, we can book, keep, and reconcile everything. So every payment is going to be there with a receipt to go alongside it, meaning that when you open up your Spendesk instance, you can see every payment that's made and every receipt that was collected, and also highlight the people who haven't uploaded a receipt. Narrowing down that search, I think, a little bit for those last couple of receipts that we all face at the end of the month. So before we kind of get into questions, because we probably covered quite a bit there, maybe to kind of recap from my side is 2020 has thrown a curveball. It's not what anyone would have expected on January 1st of this year. It's come with a lot of challenges, and it has come with a lot of, I think, very exciting opportunities. Where we're at right now is, I think, in this mode of trying to understand, how can I take the learnings from this, from what's happened? How can I understand where I can improve my business, my process? And how can I implement this, not only to help me through this current storm, but to help with the longevity and viability of my business way beyond this? An analogy that I think my boss used at middle of March was to think, and he kind of called the time Operation Darwin. And after Charles Darwin, and what Charles Darwin said, it's not going to be the biggest and the strongest who survive, it's going to be those who are most adaptable to change. And I think that's what 2020 has allowed us to do, is to kind of really figure out how quick can we adapt to change, and that will stand to absolutely every single one of us. So with that, I'm happy to jump in and answer any questions that have come up. David, I don't know if you want to work through.
Yeah, thanks for that, Paddy. That was really, really useful. And there are a couple of questions that have started to filter through. So first one that's coming from Phil was, where does Spendesk sit in relation to sort of FCA regulation? And are you regulated by the FCA? And do you have a banking guarantee, like, up to a certain amount that is guaranteed that sits within Spendesk?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, with Spendesk, we are fully regulated across the board. We actually work with a third-party banking partner, and all of the funds held within Spendesk actually are held in third-party bank accounts, namely NatWest, Starling Bank, and they're going to kill me if I get the French bank wrong, but it's one of the blue chip French banks as well. So absolutely all the funds sit there, and then will be fully guaranteed alongside that.
Good news, that answers that question. One of the questions that's coming from Zane is around sort of setting limits, and I suppose the customization of Spendesk, and saying, can you sort of set limits per card, per staff member, per day, per type of transaction, for example? How far can you go with that? I mean, you might not know all the finer details, but I suppose are those features within there?
You can do some weird and wonderful things, to be perfectly honest, is the way I put it. So again, you can set limits, rules per cards. So whether you want to block certain categories per card, a big one we always see is people might put their work card onto a taxi account through human error more so than anything else. But then next thing you know, you see an Uber receipt from 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if anyone wants to be paying that back, and that causes a lot of issues. So you can put, say, a block on taxis, or you can put a block on weekends for certain cards. And then of course you can build out whatever approval flows that you need as well that go alongside that, limits, etc. So again, fully customizable, which we find is the way forward, because every business has very, very different needs when it comes to this.
And it sort of follows on from that question slightly, a question from Emily just around what happens, for example, if you're trying to make spends outside of office hours and someone else needs to approve it and they're obviously not around. I'm presuming, does that just get kicked back to the next day, for example?
No, so it's a very good point, because if you are trying to make a payment, that's why with the physical cards, the approval is done at the point of top up rather than the point of purchase, because the last thing you want to be doing is bringing a client out for a dinner and getting declined there. So it's, again, the employee can actually get the approval to top up the card before purchase. Now, if someone, say, wants to buy something online at 8 o'clock at night and they want to use a virtual card, they need approval. What's going to happen to their boss or to their CFO or whatever way it's set up is they're going to get pinged on either Slack, through a push notification on their mobile, or via email. With a one-click kind of approval, they'll see all of the details, so they can approve in pretty much real time as well.
Yeah, that's really useful. Thank you very much for that. One through from Patrick asking about sort of retrieving of receipts, and basically, does using Spendesk make that simpler? So if you go and make purchases, is it much easier to get your hands on receipts in relation to those purchases?
Yeah, this is a fun one. This is a fun one that we like talking about. Receipt capture. We know it's a nightmare, and we know it's really, really difficult for people. It's not the work that anyone wants to do. Certainly being on the receiving end of the email saying, can you please upload your receipt? I don't want to receive them, and I can pretty much guarantee the finance assistant or whoever does not want to send them. So what we think about Spendesk is a couple of ways. So first of all, what we do is after every payment is made, by that person who has an account with Spendesk, we're going to notify them saying, please upload your receipt right away. Real time, via email, via Slack, via push notification, whatever way we want to do it. We think that actually works pretty well. We actually think we claim back quite a few receipts. That being said, it wasn't good enough for us. So we brought out a new tool, a new toy, as I like to call it. Certainly when we're speaking with accountants, I think that's they like to see as well. It's called Play by the Rules. So what Play by the Rules does is it blocks employees from making any spend after they haven't uploaded X number of receipts set by the company. So if you make 3 payments, you haven't uploaded your receipts, you're not making any more payments until you do. Tough luck. If you want to spend our money, you've got to play by our rules. We think that's fair, and we think from our beta test on it, and it was just released last month, I believe, it's getting up to about 96% of receipts collected within a 48-hour period. So pretty effective, we think.
Yeah, sounds like it's doing the trick. So hopefully that answers the question on that. And I think we've got through the questions that we've had so far. So thanks for chucking your questions in, and thanks, Paddy, as well, because I think you've done a really good job of covering sort of all bases on that. I suppose just one question from myself is if we've got sort of accounting, bookkeeping partners, anybody else listening today, and they think, actually, this is really great, I want to hear some more. We're going to be sending in some content out after, but do you have specific sort of accounting channels and partnerships that people can sort of go through as well? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. It's from the partnership side, it's something that we're always really excited in. And there is one of the team here, Elita, who actually works directly with UK partners. So that's really exciting. And Dave, we can make sure that we have a contact there that you can kind of follow up with. But I think for anyone on the call, if you are looking to learn more, whether it's to use Spendesk, whether it's just to learn more about the product, whether it's just to have a chat, I will give you 3 ways of getting in touch. 1, patrick.o'neill@spendesk.com. Shoot me an email. Love to hear from you. So it's patrick.o'neill@spendesk.com. Please don't call me Patrick, only my mum ends up doing that, but that's my email address. Second one is if you want to get me on LinkedIn, so Paddy O'Neill, probably the most active there. So always a good channel to get me. But even if you want to skip me altogether, Spendesk.com, you can click the book a demo link, and one of our team will get in touch with you ASAP. We can have a conversation about what you're looking to do, what is important for you, and just to kind of get your feedback as well. So at Spendesk.com, you'll see a button saying book a demo.
Brilliant, that's great. Thanks for that, Paddy. And before we just sort of break up, actually, one final question's come through from Zane, just asking about integration, specifically with Xero, just saying how does that work in terms of that integration and feeding that data through?
Yeah, it's actually something that we worked with the Xero team on. So it is basically when you kind of run through the payments at the end of the month, or whatever way you want to do it, you can do the reconciliation in Spendesk, and you can make sure that all the receipts are collected. You can finalize all the files, and then you just click one button, and it's going to be set up to send exactly to where you need to go to in Xero, meaning that all of the data, like all of the bookkeeping and everything, is done in Spendesk. We just export the reconcile file with one click into whatever way you need it to be. So our onboarding team actually work directly with our customers just to make sure that the files match, so that we make sure that it's completely seamless and there is no copying and pasting. There is no, even in this case, no download and upload workflow. One click of the button and we're good to go.
Yeah, that's great, and that's what we like these days, isn't it? Nice and simple and effective. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, well, thanks again for that today, Paddy. And just to confirm for everyone listening, we will be sending through a follow-up of the call today as well. We'll send a recording through and also some useful links as well, just so if you want to see a little bit more and hear a little bit more and you didn't get those details from Paddy, then we can send those through. Have a good rest of your day, whether that's whether you're in the morning in the States or if it's in the afternoon and you're going to be clocking off soon and it's nearly 5 o'clock in the UK, then whatever you're up to, have a good rest of your day. Thanks.
Thanks very much for having me, and I hope you found it valuable.
Yes, certainly did. Cheers, Paddy. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye-bye.